So it's the 22nd of March 2016, Tuesday, and there's been a blast in Brussels airport terminal. Brussels airport, it's they've blown out a load of windows. They reckon it was somebody must have been in the queue probably for the checkout. They said checkout, so I don't know if it's check-in, check-out. My guess is they're trying to check in. They only just recently changed the system in Brussels from reading up on it, researching it. And everybody goes to the connector, as it's called. It's a kind of corridor, passageway, big broad looking hall place. And from there you're kind of vetted a little bit somehow. I don't know if it's however it's done, but you can then go to the various gates, B gates and A gates and stuff. I've never been there, but that's what research shows. And so, you know, that's yet another terrorist attack, which I think is on the back of this Salah Abdeslam character having been caught, the man who was the survivor of the active attackers who participated, actually physically participated. There's more behind the scenes, but physically participated in the Paris shootings last year, 2015. Now, I get the impression that some people must think I am anti-Muslim, which is not the case. The impression must be gained because my daughter said to me the other day, she was going out with somebody, going to meet a couple of friends, and one of the friends was called Roshan or something. I'm deliberately fogging the name, but it's something like Roshan. And she said, she's not Muslim, you know. And I said, what? I said, it's alright. I said, you can go out with somebody Muslim if you want. You can go cinema, you can go do stuff. I said, it's your friends, it's not my friends. I said, don't get the impression that I am anti-Muslim. I am probably anti whichever terrorist organisation it is at the time that's causing the most trouble. I have some good stories about Muslims. Here's one. I bought a car from a guy in Leicester, and there's quite a lot of Muslims in Leicester. And I'll cut a long story short, the car wasn't very good. But I didn't know that until I'd driven it a few miles up the motorway, back up towards Yorkshire. So I drove those few miles and realised it was awful. So I rang the guy up. And he'd been a very decent bloke, you know. He invited me in and we had a chat and he gave me a cup of tea and I paid the money. It was only a few £100s, it wasn't thousands of pounds, it was hundreds of pounds. And I phoned him up when I got back. I think it was either that night or the next day, and I said, look, there's something strange about the gearbox. So to cut a long story short, the wrong gearbox had been fitted to this car. Right, so what I expected was a load of abuse, or at the very least fob off or whatever, right? In fact, what he said was, now not everyone will agree with this, but what he said was, if you bring the car back, I'll give you all your money back. And he said, there's no rush, but if you bring it back, I'll give you all your money back. And I thought to myself, well, I will have to get the bus, but it's only a few quid on the bus to come back. To get my hundreds of pounds back, it's probably worth it. So I went all the way down to Leicester in the car, and I don't know if I'd already bought the ticket or not, but I got the ticket, got in the coach on the way back, and yeah, it was inconvenient, but I got all my hundreds of pounds back, and the guy apologised very much, and he gave me every single penny I'd paid him the couple of days or the week before. All I can say is that there's plenty of white guys that would have sold me that car, and then not been available on the phone, changed their number, answering messages, or you get fobbed off, you get abuse. I'm going through the various stages of seriousness. And if you turned up at the door, he'd further fob you off and say that, you know, he sold the car as seen. Alright, now that's an old one that's used, I'll not go into all that stuff. So, and a friend of mine, moving on from that, a friend of mine way back when said, now we in this country, in the UK, we used to call Muslims Asians, and some people still do it, but I tend not to do it, because I know that my second biggest audience is in North America. Not that I have a big audience at all, but my second biggest audience is in North America, the other two people who watch these videos. And those those people will think when I say Asian, I mean someone Chinese or Japanese or something like that. So I never use the term Asian now. Plus, it doesn't convey very much, whereas, Muslim conveys a whole culture as well as roughly the region where people are from, to a massive area. That's about as rough as you get. So a friend of mine used to say, "Oh, at least if I see a bunch of Asian kids, I know there's not going to be trouble. If you're walking down the street on your own, and there's a bunch of Asian youths, as he called them, as I would say, Muslim youths come towards you," he said, "at least you know there's not going to be trouble." Now, what was interesting was I spoke to him recently about this. The past couple of years I spoke to him about this, and he said that's no longer the case. He said, "Now I'm wary of what's going to happen." Okay, so there has been a whole kind of sea change in mindset. The liberal white people, who were completely normal, average people, have now become very slightly hostile, or at the very least guarded, towards the Muslim population. Now, there's probably a big difference between hostile and guarded, to be honest. And probably guarded is a fairer description. Wary, guarded, what else are you going to do? So, in some ways, it's not the Muslim population in general's fault what's happened. But in other ways, there are issues that the Muslim population has to sort out in order that they not be blamed or held almost as much accountable for harbouring criminals, terrorist criminals, as if they were part of it. The classic example has just occurred in the last week. Molynbeek in Brussels, in Belgium. The guy, Salah Abdeslam, was there for months. It appears more or less he left Paris. He may have driven round a bit, maybe tried to get across a border or two. I don't think so. I think he's gone straight to Molynbeek. And he may have moved around houses there, but essentially he's been in touch with his family and he stayed in Molynbeek, the area where he came from, and he's only one street over from where his house is that he used to live when he was in Molynbeek. So, on the surface, the police are fools. But of course, what's happened in practice is the community has closed ranks. That's the only way that a guy like that can be in that area and not be picked up. Now, why does the community close ranks? There are just two reasons why communities do this. One, no one wants to be a snitch. You ask people in Ireland if anyone was keen to speak out against IRA members. From my experience of living in Scotland, I can tell you, people generally know to the door, to the house number, to the house, to the name. People generally know who the bad eggs are, who the bad apples are, and nobody wants to be a snitch. So that's about it, really. Everyone's afraid that if they're a snitch, somebody's going to come down on them hard. I mean, in a terrorist situation, I guess, even kill them. In the IRA situation, even kill them. So you have the crazy situation where loads of the population know who the dangerous people are. Loads of them know where they live and where the hangouts are, and probably even where the farms are, in the case of the IRA, where they dug a big hole and dumped their arms and covered it over. But everyone's too frightened to speak out. There's two big things here which are hard to separate. So just the same as the Irish were afraid to speak out, either Northern Irish or Southern Irish were afraid to speak out and name names, the Muslim population must be slightly on side with some of the things that's happening, because a lot of bad things are done to them by white people, because the politicians tend to be broadly middle-class white people in suits. So they're slightly on side with some of the sentiment, if not the actions. But then there's a big element of fear, and that fear doubles if you get a family. It's all very well speaking out and being a snitch and a confidential informant or CI or whatever you call it, but what do you do when you've got a family? It's bad enough being scared for yourself. What do you do when you've got a family? And it's all very well the police saying that they'll keep it secret and all that. If you've ever seen the police in action, you'll know that they can work with the best of intentions, but at the end of the day, a confidential informant is taking a chance that the police will turn up one day in a flipping great cop car with the lights blazing and ask them a load of questions about something and go straight from their house, straight to whoever the criminal is, And it's like having a big neon sign saying, "Here's the confidential informant." I mean, shit, right? So, what I'm saying is, just as it's understandable that the IRA were not informed on that much, and the opposition factions to them, just as that is true, it's as true that the Muslim population in general has to be concerned for its own safety if it speaks out. It's just got to be concerned for its own safety. So we have to temper whatever hostility we feel and bring it back to guarded or wary, because not everyone's happy with what's happening that's in the community. But what are they going to do? Are they going to quietly walk down to the police station? Are they going to quietly email? It turns out a lot of these things are traceable these days, and you just don't know who's seeing what. So I'm saying I have some sympathy with the position of somebody who might want to have a terrorist suspect caught, but on the other hand, who wants to be the one that names the name and points the finger? So, there are issues there. The deeper issue, I'd say, with the Muslim community, and this is, you understand, from a guy who's outside it, and I've got to say to you, the same as with the IRA and Irish situation. In a way, it's only people who are outside the community that can say certain things. Because someone in the community, can you imagine someone from inside the Muslim community daring to say that Salah Abdeslam was a murdering terrorist thug? How would they dare to do that? So, okay. So maybe it is left for people who aren't from that community, to close-knit community, to speak out. I don't know. But you got to say what you think. The thing that I think deeper culture and longer term that the Muslim community is going to have to face is the fact that they actually need, and I'm not in any way criticising your text, the Koran, except to say this: you actually need a New Testament. I would criticise your Koran no more than I would criticise the Old Testament, perhaps, of the Christian belief, because I don't even know how the Old Testament came about to be changed, but a lot of people there seemed to be a sweeping change we had in the Christian community, and we changed the New Testament, and no one's ever really looked back. So it's such a thing now, the Old Testament, that we've left it, that people say things to make a strong point. They'll say, "I would be very Old Testament about this," meaning an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. And so it is it's a very serious and strict way of looking at our doctrine, the general Christian belief that we're brought up with. It still forms the framework of the United Kingdom and lots of European white-dominated countries. The Quran just hasn't moved, as I understand it. And I think if you're going to have a book that everyone follows and feels is really important, and they have to follow it sometimes to the letter's going to have to be rewritten. Now, I don't know how you square that, because you guys believe that it's absolutely the Word of God or whatever, so it mustn't be changed. But, plenty of our Bible was meant to be absolutely straight up, and we moved to New Testament. So, I think deeper and longer term, talk around that has to happen, and you've got to maybe think of modifying your view. I think people in reality, you see, have modified their view, just as Catholics in the Christian faith. Plenty of Catholics use condoms, and yet the Catholic Church for decades forever said that condoms were not to be used. Child birth was a God-given right to happen, and you were not meant to interfere with it. Conception. But plenty of Catholics did something to do with it, even if it's just not having contact at the last minute or something. So in the same way, a lot of Muslims, I think, in the UK and in other places, have altered how they actually, in practice, deal with day-to-day matters without actually altering the text. But what I'm saying is it possible that in the longer term, the only real cure for this, this continual pouring out of hatred and really serious stuff being at odds with a modern concept of secularism and people being entitled to have their say and so on, not getting their legs chopped off because they wear trousers that are too long or whatever it is, not getting thrown off a tall building because they happen to be gay. It's just, a lot of this stuff in the New Testament even was quite serious, but nowadays we treat it so what? And I just think maybe the Muslim population has to seriously consider whether the Quran doesn't have to have a new Quran view of things. And you reinterpret and take some things with a pinch of salt. And slavery and stuff, and women being subjugated to an extent. Maybe all that has to be certainly rethought about, and I would even suggest rewritten. I mean, I don't know how you do that. How do you square that circle? Anyway, I just wanted to set it up that I'm not anti-Muslim. As I said to my daughter, I'm anti-people plotting to murder folk, and anti-people pretending to be alright with you when actually they hate your guts and two-faced. Just as much as with any white person, I hate it. The only reason for being two-faced, the only good reason is to try and keep the peace. And apart from that, there is no good reason to be two-faced. So, I'm not anti-Muslim, I'm just anti-people getting blown up and people mingling with society and pretending that they're alright and stuff. And not. Look, us people, British white people, there's plenty about our society we hate. Capitalism, you can find plenty of white people who hate the capitalist system and who suffer from it. But it's a whole other step to saying you can start blowing things up and destroy the whole system and have chaos instead. And in the UK we just don't believe in chaos, I guess. You know, we'd be too concerned the trains wouldn't run on time if we blew up the station. You know, that's how British people are. We've got this tremendous, I was going to say terrible, but it's a tremendous aspect to our character that we don't want to cause chaos. So no matter how much we hate the current system, we're very wary of being thrown into chaos instead, because that's not a step forward. Okay, so please don't mix up people having a guarded point of view because of what they see in the news all day and because of what's actually happening. The rapes in Sweden, the rapes, you know, gang rapes and stuff. That's what I'm against. And if the culture helps to propagate that, I've got to an extent, be wary of the culture and say the Quran needs to be carefully thought about. That's just my view. I'm very with the New Testament and not with the Old Testament. And I think you're missing a New Testament. That's basically what Muslim people are missing. So don't think that white people are all with the white people. If you hate our politicians, don't worry. There's plenty of us with you, but we are not for blowing them all up. It's got to be handled some democratic method or some peaceful method, and it's slow and it's painful, and that's all I can really say about it. So everyone's welcome to be part of the society I'm in. I just don't want to be stabbing everyone in the back and plotting to blow people up. Thanks for watching and listening.